Hey guys, what's going on? So in this video, we'll be learning about git add and git commit. Now these were the two commands that we had previously looked into a bit, but we didn't cover that extensively. But in this video, we'll be covering these two commands extensively and we'll be making use of it. Okay, so git add is the command that we use to take the files which is present in the working directory inside the staging area. And git commit is to commit the files inside the staging area directly into the repository, and these files will completely be tracked by Git. Okay, so first and foremost thing to do is to fire up your Git bash or fire up your integrated terminal or fire up your command prompt. But for the most part, I'll be using the Git bash. So let me fire it up. After that, let me cd into the directory and hit enter. So before beginning anything, it is a good practice to always type git status so that you will get to know what all files are untracked. So right now we have two files untracked, run.py and test files inside test directory. So let me go back and see. We have two files, test.txt and run.py. Test.txt is in test. Okay, now let's add them to the staging area. Now to add them to the staging area, you can do two things. Either individually add by saying git add, then the file name say run.py, or what you need to do is you can type git add space dash a. So let's add run.py first. So type git add run.py. Now let's check the status again. As you can see, that test file is still in the working directory while run.py is now inside the staging area. Now let's make use of the other command, that is git add dash capital A. Now for that, let's create a new file again inside the Visual Studio Code. Let me create a file, say run2.py. Now if I go back to my git bash and type git status, you will see there are two files now that are untracked. Those are run2.py and test1, and we already have run.py in our staging area. Now let's add all the files which are there in working directory inside the staging area. So for that, we do git add dash a, hit enter, and let's type git status again. As you can see, all the files are now inside the staging area. Now suppose what happened is you feel like, hey, now I need to do some changes in run.py and then later I need to add them to the staging area. Now if you want to unstage anything, you can do that by typing git reset and the name of the file you want to unstage. So let's just unstage run2.py. Now let's type git status. You can see that run2.py is now unstaged. That is, it is now back in the working directory, and run.py and test/test.txt is inside the staging area. So that was all about the git add command. Let me once again git add run2.py. Okay, and one more thing. The alternative for git add dash a is git add dot. So dot in Linux stands for current directory. So I once again want to remind you over here that if you don't know any basic Linux commands, or if you are struggling to understand what cd is, ls is, flags are, you can always refer to a detailed Linux course where we have explained all this thing in detail. Okay, so git add space dot is the alternative to git add dash a. So let's add run2.py into the staging area and let's do git status. Now all the files are now in the staging area. Now one thing to note here is that it says on branch master. Now this is something that we'll be deeply covering in when we reach the branching git branch, where we'll be seeing the multiple branches and how to manage them. Now there is one thing left to do after staging, that is committing our files to repository. Now to commit your files to repository, what you need to do is to type git commit command. Now there are two ways to do commit. First is individually and the second is everything in one go. Now first is let's commit the files individually. So in order to do that, type git commit run.py, and it is always mandatory to give a commit message. Now in order to give a commit message, to -m and then inside double quotes type the commit. As I mentioned before, it is important to type a commit message because it not only tells you what exactly the commit stands for, it also helps the other developers when they're looking at your code. They'll find out, oh, so this file at that point of time used to contain this code. So it is important to append a commit message along with the file that you are committing. In our case, we will do a simple commit and hit enter. Now let's once again do git status. And as you can see that run.py is not in our staging area, which means that run.py is successfully committed. There is a command called Git Log, which tells you what all files are currently committed. So let's type Git Log. Now you can see that there is a commit with a commit ID, and it is committed by me, author Pratik. Remember, we gave a global username. That's the username here, and the email that we gave, along with the date and the commit message that we gave. Now that was how you commit files individually, and Git Log gives you the log of the commit that you did recently. Okay, so now let's commit the rest of the files. Git Status. Now you can see there are 2 files in the staging area. Now let's commit both of them. Git commit -m initial commits and hit enter. Now let's do git status, and it will tell us nothing to commit, working tree is clean, which means that there are no untracked files, and every file that we have entered has been tracked successfully, and the snapshots are successfully saved inside the Git repository. Cool. So that's how we commit, and that's how we add and commit changes. And let's do git log. Now you can see there are 2 commits that we did. This was the earlier commit saying a simple commit, and this is the latest commit which contained both the run2.py and test files, and with this commit message that we passed, which is initial commits. Okay, upon doing this, now Git is keeping a track of test.txt, run.py, and run2.py. Now, whenever we do some sort of modifications, say delete the file or do some modification inside a file, suppose run.py, Git will immediately identify it, and Git will immediately notify us that, hey, the following file is modified or the following file is deleted, depending upon your actions. So let's go ahead and delete the run2.py. And let's do some modification inside the run.py. Now, if I go ahead and type git status, you would see that, okay, let me use git bash instead, as I promised you earlier. Okay, now if I type git status, you would see that now it says run.py is modified and run2.py is deleted. Now you might ask, hey, now why is it not showing untracked? Earlier, remember, it used to be untracked, run.py and run2.py. Now why is it showing modified and deleted? The reason is that, remember, we committed these files earlier. Now Git is successfully keeping track of what all modifications are being done. Now here we have modified run.py, Git has successfully identified it, and we have also deleted run2.py, and that too Git have identified it. Now at this point, since we have committed these files, we can directly commit these changes without adding them to the staging area. In order to do that, we can do git commit -a as is being suggested over here. So you need to append m and type the commit message, basic modifications done. Upon hitting enter, and now let's look at the status. Now you'd see there is nothing to be committed. Everything is now committed inside the repository. Now let's do a git log. Now you can see that the recent git is git modifications, and what we did was we registered run.py modification inside the Git repository, and we also told Git repository that we have successfully deleted run2.py. Now remember that we did git commit -am only for modified files, or only for files that are being tracked by Git. Now if you are trying to commit a file which is not tracked by Git, first of all you need to add it to the staging area, and then after that you need to commit it to the repository by saying git commit -m and with the commit message. So alright, that's all for this video. See you in the next lecture.